Alright, I think I might just have to tweak some things here because you guys can see me on YouTube. Okay, set my source. Of course, things explode. Okay. Awesome. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I did something wrong. Okay, I think we're okay now. All right, all good. All right, so guys, we're gonna go through this character development process. I'm gonna start here in TV Paint. I just like drawing better in TV Paint. And we can start with the document size. So while you guys follow along in, say, Photoshop, we can start with the document size about document size 3300 by 2550. All right, which is basically going to be 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5 at 300 dpi. All right. Okay, and so we're going to start from the scratch. We're going to go through the 7 P's. Okay, so if you recall the 7 P's, and I'll just share a link here for you guys. The 7 P's are purpose, protagonist / plot, and proportions, pose, personality, and presentation. And just bear with me as I bring up my Trello. So if you remember, we have our purpose, our protagonist, and plot, right? Proportions, pose, personality, perspective, and presentation. I'll share a link here. I'll put it in the YouTube. Okay. All right. Yeah, I only have 54 people here I am seeing on the YouTube stream, or 67, but you know what, I think we can only control what we can control, right? So you guys are here, as long as you're paying attention, you know, I think you guys should benefit from it. So anyways, so we have here, again, a handy reminder of everything. So we have our purpose, what's the meaning of the work, what's the goal, communicate an idea, explain something, tell a story, evoke an emotional response, who is this for, and what do you want them to understand or feel. So that's the first thing we need to start with. So the very first thing that I want you guys to do is figure out what your purpose is. I'll give you a minute to kind of just think through that. This can absolutely be a character from a game that you're making, or a character that you want to make in a game, a game for next year or the year after. It can be anything you want, right? But we do want to make a character, something that we're happy to continue working with as we go through this semester. Okay. Yeah, and I'm seeing some comments about when this is due, and we only have 2 weeks. I did assign this prior to the reading week for those of you who are with us, but I recognize we probably should refresh and talk about it some more. So So yeah, so you've had like a month, close to, you know, to kind of dig into it. But 2 weeks is absolutely enough time to really do it justice. So, so anyways, here we are. We have our purpose. So we want to start with that. So what is our purpose? I'm just going to turn my camera off. So Ryan, the it's not showing on Canvas. Let me just double check, because that might be my mistake. It should be on the home page in Canvas. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's published on my side, assignment 2. Can you guys see it? Character design, assignment 2, character design. Okay. All right. So anyways, I'll do my best to follow the chat. I think I might be misunderstanding something there, but anyways, we're going to start with our purpose. So think of a purpose, you know, for a character that you guys need, something that makes sense, something that again, you'll be happy to kind of dig into or spend some time with, something that motivates you. So for me, of course, I'm working on a video game project, and you know, I have a ton of characters for that game. I need bosses, so maybe one of my characters is a boss character that I can kind of design. So this can be like a regular character, like a cute character. It can be like a menacing evil robot, like I'm probably going to do here, or otherwise. It's totally up to you guys. But I'll go for the purpose is going to be the boss of the 3rd tower in my game. Okay. Additionally, I want them to be towering. I want them to be humongous. Maybe to the point where you only see like a part of him at a time. Like he's just like, you know, maybe you need a few screens to see the entire boss. Way bigger than screen. What else? Menacing, scary, right? Okay, and I'm starting to kind of delve a little bit into my into the person that I'm drawing, the main person of this the subject, I guess, which is my second P. So my protagonist, even though this is the bad guy in my game, it's the protagonist of this drawing. Protagonist slash plot. Right, so this is so this is my purpose is to design a boss character. So who is this person? Protagonist, this is like more so who is this person? Who or what? So this is going to be, my protagonist is going to be, should give them a name. It's going to be a lame name, but I'll call it Zelbatron. Zelbatron 10,000. get to okay, so Zelbatron 10,000. Let's say he's a discontinued discontinued robot that was used for mining. Yeah, so that's a good one. I'm just kind of making this up. Discontinued mining robot. Old tech inefficient, forgive my spelling, but built to last. Extremely durable. Okay, all of this will inform the choices I make in the graphics and the design, right? So I won't make it made out of bubbles. I'll make it made out of like really tough iron that's kind of like really beaten up and dirty looking, as though he's been, you know, kind of almost like I almost want to look at a giant construction vehicle on a mining site. So that'll figure into my reference. So Zelbatron 10,000, that name can absolutely change. Discontinued mining robot, old tech, inefficient, but built to last, extremely durable, extremely dangerous. Let's put that as well. Let me just be efficient here. A little bit more efficient, let's say. Extremely dangerous. Okay. So this is me just building out the profile of the character that I'm going to make. Here I can kind of be as detailed, as elaborate as I want. The more specific I can get here, the more interesting my character will come out as, and the more I can do. So I think that's good for now. Proportions. And this is kind of opportunity 1. They're all opportunities to iterate, but this is kind of like a good opportunity to iterate visually. I'll just put a note here. To iterate. Opportunity to iterate visually. Okay, so what does that mean? This is a good opportunity to kind of start doing thumbnails, right? Playing with shapes, thinking about, you know, what this thing's going to look like. And I'll absolutely need reference. So kind of at this point, you know, probably want to start looking at ref. Okay, and I have plenty, so I'm going to start pulling that in. I'm going to use a Pinterest, and I'm going to also use a pure ref. So pure ref, I think I mentioned to you guys, but if not, I'll link it and mention it again. Okay. Okay, so there's PureRef. You can check it out. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is PureRef. It's a free application that you can download. It's donationware basically, so they're gonna ask for a donation. You don't have to make one, but you can if you want. And it lets you kind of organize and kind of combine all your reference images. Okay, and I have a Pinterest, which I will bring up. And I'll open PureRef here as well. Okay, so I have Pinterest here, and I have like references from the time period, like the 80s, late 80s, and then if I go way back, I'm gonna have some like old machinery. It's gonna be way back. But here, this kind of I collect all the references that I think I could need for my project. Characters, equipment, gear, time period, all kinds of stuff, right? Not a bad habit to get into for any project you guys are working on, especially if you're working in a team. Just to kind of keep other people abreast of kind of what you have in mind, where you're going with things, and kind of what ideas you have. And characters, games. I'll have to go way down, but here I'm starting to see some of the references that I'm thinking of. Further back. So this is the kind of stuff. This is kind of like what I'm thinking of, partially in terms of like maybe some of the inspiration that I could pull into this gigantic robot. You know, that maybe he's as big as a building, even. The kind of like the kind of thing you'd never see in real life or on a regular construction site, but if you will like visit a mining plant, like if you went somewhere where they dig for gold or whatever, or you might see these gigantic machines. So that's kind of what I'm gonna have inform my design, both in terms of like just the shapes and the colors and everything else, and then in the final presentation as well in terms of textures and all that. So I'm just going to start pulling from these. And the nice thing about PureRef, once you have it open, okay, this is basically what it looks like. It sits on top of your other applications. So even though I'm able to kind of scroll through here, it's always going to sit on top. And even when I'm kind of in my drawing application, it's always going to sit on top, and that's what makes it so handy for reference, right? And a couple nice things about it. I can right click, copy an image, and click here, and I can paste it. Okay, and then I can also save this after the fact as well. Okay, so I like these big, simple forms, the cylindrical forms, the tubes, the pipes, kind of wheels, things like that, the rustiness. These are all things that will help inform my idea. Definitely I want to look at some of these forms, and I want to get the sense of the scale. I want to definitely make it look really big, so I want to reference things that are quite big, and that will kind of tie into my perspective choices as well, and where am I going to put my horizon line relative to this object. So for here, for example, the horizon line is quite low. We're kind of looking up at this. This is almost like a 1-point perspective, with the vanishing point being at the zenith, right at the top. And I don't want to get carried away here, but you guys take your time. Gathering reference is kind of one of the most fun things to do. But the only caution I give you is set a time limit for yourself. You can never, you can look at reference endlessly. And depending on where you work and what kind of project you're working on and what kind of budget they have, some places they'll let you work on look at references for months and months and months. If you're working on a Disney feature film, or if you're working on a AAA game, depending what the game is, they will invest a lot of money into you making sure that exactly what you're drawing or painting or building. I think Ubisoft does a ton of reference for their Assassin's Creed games and their what are their other games? The Far Cry games. And so it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not like they just grab an image and they just kind of come up with it. No, the artists and the animators and the designers, they have to make themselves experts on that subject material. So, for example, for the animators of Spirit, the 2D Spirit movie, the Stallion of the Cimarron, they had to kind of become like horse experts, like down to the anatomy, how they move, how they run, how to draw them from every different angle. They spent months and months and months doing that, right? Before they started doing all the animation and the character designs. There's a long visual development process that usually happens. We don't necessarily have the luxury of doing that in school because things come at us so quickly. But generally speaking, it is something that you want to sit down and acquaint yourselves with whatever it is you're supposed to recreate. Because when you know something really well, then you can take your liberties and you can have more fun with it. Oh man. Is there a way to jump to the bottom? I don't want to scroll through this list again. I'm going to duplicate this and just go back to where I was. I'm going to look for equipment. I'm going to look for construction equipment. Yeah, so this is what I want, like these massive machines. Okay, so I'm going to give myself a time limit because I know myself and I could do this for days and days and days and days. So I'm going to give myself, say, I have a timer here. 5 minutes is too much. You know what, 5 minutes is fine. But I want you guys to do the same thing. So I'm setting my timer here. You can hear it beep. 5 minutes, guys. Gather references. I'll gather references too. If you want to take a break, now's the time to take it. I'm going to keep gathering references. Once I've got all my references, I will start sketching things out, playing with proportions and exploring ideas. It's got a giant chainsaw. It's insane. Isn't this cool? Can you believe that this stuff exists in the world? It just blows my mind. And I think what really impresses me about these, like, you get the sense of scale because whoever's taking the picture is like just a regular sized person, and they're taking it from the ground, and they can't help but look up at it, right? The horizon line is at their eye level, and so you get a sense of like how large these things are, right? As artists, we have kind of the control. We can kind of decide how we want to present something, what vantage point we want to show it from. If I show it from a higher angle, it doesn't look quite as imposing. If I put people next to it, yeah, we do get a sense of the scale. But it's just incredible to me, like how gigantic some of this construction equipment is. This is really cool. So you can actually look at like references from other artists too. That's fine, so long as you don't copy. You know, you can take inspiration. And I'm thinking of like weapons that the character might have. By the way, you can middle click on a link to open it in a new tab. You guys probably already all know that, but I found that out from my students one year, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. Okay, so I'm at about 2.5 more minutes. This is cool. So again, I'm copying all of these and then just pasting into my PureRef window. For those of you who are using PureRef, you can right click on the window to move it around. Left click or middle click within the window, middle click and drag to move just the images within that window. And then left click to select a single image and then move that around. You can double click on an image to kind of go to zoom into it. And once you've zoomed in, you can use the left and right arrows to kind of step through each of the different images. Mouse wheel will also allow you to zoom in and zoom out. I don't know if this is a GIF or let's see if we can copy and paste that. Okay, just gives us the one image, but it's okay. And you can also middle click on a tab to close it. I don't know if you guys knew that either, but just in case. You guys always have very interesting commentary in the chat there. Okay, I guess you got to keep it interesting, right? Okay, so copy this one. I'm at 20 more seconds. I'm gonna try to squeeze in as many more of these as I can. I think I got that one already. This one's kind of cool. This would be good for like a weapon, an arm cannon or something. Okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit here. Just gonna grab these last few. Don't need that. Don't need this one. I like. And what I realized I didn't look at, but I should also look at, is like giant mechs, like mech references. So that's kind of like a thing that I would do next. Yeah, look at these. These are awesome, right? Like getting some references like this. So I apologize. Like I know I said I could grab references forever, but I'm just gonna get a few more, just because there's some really kind of cool things in here. Again, never copy, but we can absolutely be inspired by. And I do ask that you include all your references. Just include it as a snapshot of either your PureRef board or you can kind of put all these these images together and make an inspiration board in Photoshop. But do capture all of the references. I just want to see kind of how you arrived at your ideas. And make sure you didn't copy one thing too closely, right? So yeah, for this I do expect an original character. So let's throw that out there. I don't expect that this will be Among Us character or anything like that. This is going to be a totally original character of your own creation. Okay. Yeah, these are really, really cool. I like this. Okay, and having good references like makes a huge difference. I like this design. It's a little too sleek and elegant for what I want to do, I think. So I'm gonna probably go in a different direction. I want something blockier, chunkier. I feel like I saw something. Okay. All right, so let's kind of move on from here. Close that. All right, so now I can start exploring proportions, and then from proportions I can look at posing, right? Okay, and here's another thing. Try different poses, right? So explore different pose ideas. And poses come from, it's a mixture of kind of shapes, right? And just kind of like thinking about kind of what that graphic silhouette is, right? And then there's also structure, right? Thinking of like, this is a rectangular prism, right? And this head is going to be a rectangular prism. That kind of thing, right? And this maybe is like more of a cylindrical form here, and this leg is a cylindrical form. Okay, that's how we can kind of think about posing and being able to kind of draw and design a character in perspective. Okay, is this from Titanfall, the Enforcer? I don't know. You guys will know this stuff better than I will. But all I know, I really like these ideas. Really, really cool concepts. Before I forget, and I had some issues with this earlier today, I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to click save as, and I will save this. Okay, I'm just putting it on my second monitor here, but I will reference that as I kind of explore my proportions, and I want to do at least 3. So I want to do, right, I want to do at least three different ideas. Okay. For the pose and the proportions in particular, right? Just so I can really kind of explore and make sure that I'm happy with whatever I get. So I have a couple of choices, like high level choices to make. Do I want my character to be more wide than tall or more tall than wide? I can make them squarish, but either way, I can kind of come up with something that I think that is interesting, and I want to think about scale. So it's not a bad idea to put a human scale reference in there, and say my person is this big, and the mech here is say this big, or something, right? And when I think about proportions, I don't have to think about pose. I could just focus solely on proportions and just explore different shapes and forms and things like that. And feel free. And I know it was a long time ago, but this is where you explore the method of shape and thumbnail exploration that seems most comfortable to you. So again, we talked about different things. We talked about starting with scribbles, right? And then kind of refining those scribbles into something a little bit more solid. And those scribbles could be, whatever you want. But then later on, you're thinking about things like straight lines, curved lines, right? And trying to get the elements and principles of design injected into the shape choices that you're making. And of course, we can have multiple shapes as well. Okay. I don't want anything probably like with like really thin kind of shapes like this. It looks maybe a little too elegant. I think whatever I want, it's going to be blocky, big, chunky, right? Again, referencing this here and always circling back to my purpose and my protagonist, right? So Zelbatron 10,000, discontinued mining robot, old tech and inefficient but built to last, extremely durable, extremely dangerous. Should probably also put extremely large. Boss of the third tower in the game, towering, way bigger than the screen, menacing and scary looking. So those should kind of be mirrored in my choices here. So this guy, I don't know what it is, but it looks like kind of speaks to that, the vantage point and everything, and just like the silhouette. So I think taller versus wider, I think, is kind of what I want. Towering, way bigger than the screen, right? So if my character is down here and my game screen is going to be something like this, right? And we just see like maybe these treads, or I should look at tanks as well, actually. And it's okay to kind of go through that thought process like I'm going through now, where you're like, oh, you know what else would be good? It would be this, it would be this, it would be this. You don't have to have it all figured out at the beginning. It's a very organic and iterative process, potentially, right? So, but what I should do when I get that idea, I should follow it up. I should explore it. If I feel like I need some references of a tank tread, I should actually grab it. So this is a part of the process. So I will go to Pinterest again. Go for tank treads, or just tank. Oops. I'm gonna get tank tops and then I'm gonna get tanks. Okay, so yeah, this is great. Copy this. And like when you see stuff like this, you're like, where did these guys come up with this idea? Probably looked at samurai armor, right? This guy's got samurai armor. Maybe like the vehicles, maybe looked at some sci-fi stuff, looked at other games, look at guns, look at other mechs, right? And that's where this guy's ideas came from. This guy obviously looked at a tank, right? And he kind of mashed a tank together with some other things. Looked at some other mechs and everything like that. But yeah, wherever possible, go straight to the source. Really get that clarity on the specific thing that you want to incorporate into your design, so that your work is not too derivative of something else. So it's fresh, unique. Oh, this is a cool tank. It's funny, cute, but not what I want. It's interesting. And I'm curious, world's tallest tank. What would I get if I search that? Okay. What I like about this, the design language, is like those tiny little rivets and panels make the thing look big, right? It makes it look huge. The way like the lines between things are very fine and thin, instead of kind of wider and thicker, it makes it look really, really extremely large. Like it's made out of a lot of smaller pieces or regular sized pieces, right? That just kind of lends to that sense of scale. All right, so let's kind of loop back. Again, I'm going to save this because I added some new images. Save. So I'm thinking the feet can be treads, you know, and potentially in our game, like we might not even see the feet. It might be like a Kraid from Metroid thing, where like you only ever see his upper body, right? Because he's just so gigantic. So I'm mixing in some what I would call studies. A study is me kind of just like kind of drawing from a reference image. Kind of just like learning, right? Just kind of seeing what is what. You know, kind of planning out, oh, there's rivets here, right? There is a bolted piece of metal, you know, on here. There's a hatch here, right? What does the hatch look like? You know, I can kind of go in and go closer and see what does this hatch look like. All right, and that might come in handy on a certain part of my actual design. Okay. And ideally, by the end of this, you'll be an expert on a particular thing, like whatever you've researched to kind of pull into your design. You'll be more well. You'll be better versed in whatever that thing is. So if it's a bike, if you have to learn how to draw bikes to for your character, or a motorcycle, get the reference, learn how to do it, figure out like how they're put together, how they work. Okay, so I like some aspects of this. I like how the tire treads are, so feel free. I'll go into even more detail here, and I might just do a study just on that because I might not want the rest of the design, but maybe I like how the tire treads are. Okay, and I can copy that, right? And this would be something that would just kind of sit next to itself. Okay. So, and then of course we'd have some kind of wheel mechanism inside there. So this can be also done on paper, guys. Don't feel like you need to work digitally for this part. This can absolutely be done on paper. Okay, and I like this idea here right? And I like this way the metal looks like it's not like molded, it's not like, you know, organic looking. It's just like a very abrupt, very like kind of workmanlike. It's, you know, it's just like sharp cuts and some rivets there. It's nothing fancy, it's just like pure like function, you know. It's not like they're not caring about aesthetics per se. It's just like no one's ever supposed to see this. It's not fancy or pretty, it's just supposed to get the job done. So I like that aesthetic. I want to balance that with also making it look good, right? So finding a way to make it also aesthetically pleasing with it by making it not look aesthetically pleasing, if that makes sense, you know. Finding that that balance. Okay, so I like this. I definitely like what I have here, or that section. I like this hatch a lot. I really like how that is. And I've only looked at this one drawing in detail. When I used to work at Rainmaker, and I worked on the Barbie movies, that was probably like the closest to like and it wasn't even like close, but it was kind of like the closest to like that Disney experience where they gave us a few weeks, or maybe a few weeks, but maybe a few days to just kind of research things. So each movie would have a different theme, and they gave us some time to just draw, go to the library, draw some things, and kind of just get a sense of what things look like. And there's definitely a kind of an opportunity there. There's a lot of learning that happens. Just kind of just doing studies. All right, so that's kind of the structure that I'm kind of enamored with here. I like that, and I might kind of play with that and bring in some rivets, maybe around here. Even though they're not present in the drawing, this is my artistic license to be able to say I want to do this. Maybe we have like the Zelbatron 10,000, right? So going back to my Pinterest, let's go back there one more time. And if I look at some of these old synthesizers, MC500, let me just grab that copy image, put that on my PRF. Right? So look how the writing here is. That's kind of interesting to me. So maybe I have something like that. Zelbatron. It may fit, it may not, but can have Zelbatron. $10,000, right? Something like that. And I might break it out into different layers. And that's just to tie it more closely to the game world that I have. So actually purpose, and I'll come back, I'll loop back to this, needs to fit stylistically with style-wise. with Gladiatron. That's the name of the game. So yeah, so I would also actually want to pull in references from my project, and just to make sure that stylistically it lines up, matches with everything else. I won't do that now, but I kind of already know in my mind what that will need to look like. All right, so now I've got some references. I've done a little bit of like exploration. I've drawn a few things. Let me draw this because I really like this as well. I can kind of see this is like almost like a Mega Man style kind of like boss weapon. Where you get the torpedo attack or something, the torpedo boss. So here's, again, I was talking about it earlier, but when I said that some lines you suggest and some lines you draw in, this is a line, but it's more of a plane change. It's like if this part's flat, right, and this part is curved. It's almost like we had this curved structure, and then a part of it was cut off, right, and it's left this flat surface. So this is where, you know, that's a more skilled artist will know. Maybe don't draw all that in. Maybe you suggest it, right? And maybe you never have to draw it in at all, because you know you're going to be working with value later, and you know that you can render it a certain way. You can have this, right? You can have this like a slightly different value, and you can kind of suggest like that edge highlight using a lighter tone here on those edges, right? So that's that just comes with experience and knowing what you need to show, what you can not show, and what you can suggest, and how you might how you might go about that. Right? But yeah, so I want to get this kind of form. I really like these giant like chunks that we have for these. This is a torpedo. This is like an anchor, it looks like. This giant anchor. That would be another cool thing to reference, actually. Anchors, modern anchors, bombs. All right, so yeah, so this is kind of like the direction I'm getting like bits and pieces of what I want. I haven't found like a full way to kind of integrate everything, but I have like little snapshots of details here and there that I can absolutely pull from. Okay, so now we want to think of the bigger picture, like what is this overall, the shape of structure of this thing, and let's see if we can. One thing I will mention as I'm doing this is I usually like to avoid looking at references early on. I like to explore what's in my head first, because as soon as I look at references, it just could just be the way I am. I kind of like get too married to the reference, and I kind of get a little too tight, and I lose some of that creative freedom and exploration that I might do ordinarily. Yeah, so for that reason, I sometimes like to see what I can come up with on my own first, just kind of purge whatever's in my brain to begin with, and then kind of continuously explore after that. Because as you can see right now, I'm just kind of relying on kind of drawing what I see. I'm over relying on that reference. So what I think I'll do, I'll just look at it, 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 look at it. kind of high level, take a look at things, ask myself height versus width, what kind of shapes, blocky shapes, what kind of stances, wide stance, close stance, arm to leg length ratios, things like that. And just high level, kind of get a sense of what that is, what those legs look like. Do the knees jut forwards? Or are they kind of like, yeah, some of them they do. All right, so now I'm going to just kind of like not look at that. I'll continuously explore. So this area is going to grow. So this is all my pose stuff, or all my proportions. Okay. I like asymmetry, like just personally, I like asymmetry, and I want to not lose this sense of gigantic scale. I really want it to seem like humongous. So I have to be very careful to not make some of these things too read as like too small. And any kind of tricks that I can kind of have to kind of make it look the correct size, I want to make sure that I do that. And this can be reinforced later on, but for now I'll just kind of work with what I have here. Get some like treads going, tank treads. Kind of like just regurgitating to some degree, like some of the stuff that I've looked at and that I liked and that I identified as, once you draw something and you kind of like just try to kind of look at it, draw it, it will, you'll have it. It's almost like it's like a Pokemon now that you have at your, it's part of your arsenal. Yeah, it's in your Pokeball. And you can kind of like call upon it. That's kind of like the nice thing about doing studies and things like that. Sorry, I reference Pokemon because my son's into it now. And, I never got into Pokemon. But yeah. I like this idea of like, maybe it's here. And I have to be careful. This is one of the main reasons I like to to do this stuff on paper is I'm very quickly going to get to the point where I'm over I'm trying to like fix, edit versus just kind of put ideas down. So I just want to try out different shapes, not get too caught up in details. Just want to really focus on proportions. Get that very high level kind of rendition. See how we're doing for time. Okay. Okay, so explore. Think of something like more lopsided. One side is higher than the other. Almost think of like kind of something that was kind of put together on a scrap heap, made out of just like loose spare parts. I don't really know what I want to do with the head. That's something I haven't really considered much of. That's kind of kind of causing me some issues here. How I want to handle the head. Maybe I don't even have a head, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe there is no head. It's just like a robot. And I think what would also help me is like, what is its function? Does it dig dirt? You know, maybe it kind of moves up and down. Right? Maybe it's got some kind of like screw kind of structure or drill type structure to it, with arms. And some kind of like head shape that can kind of stay fixed while this body rotates. I think I'm kind of getting like an idea here. So this is kind of the creative process for me, at least. It's not linear. It's very kind of like exploratory. I ask myself a lot of questions, and I think about things. I look at other things that I've drawn, and I kind of try to continuously iterate, kind of build on my ideas. I don't know exactly where I'm going all the time, and I'm comfortable with that. And I do my best to kind of keep the faith that I will wind up with something that I like, if I stick with it long enough, right? If I give up, I won't, you know. But if I stick with it, you know, for a couple hours, chances are I'll probably find something that I can work with. Sometimes it comes quickly, sometimes it takes longer. But the idea, do several thumbnails, and eventually we should come to some idea of, yes, this will work or this will not work. We'll realize whether or not we need to pivot, right, and come up with a totally different idea. Or maybe we need to look at some more references. But I think I'm onto something with this. I think this is not it yet, but this, I'm onto something. And I like this idea of maybe there's this kind of like corkscrew mechanism, or this screw mechanism. Maybe it's not a drill per se, but maybe there's a way. Maybe he's got some kind of base. I like that, actually. So we've got a base. He's got this kind of like screw mechanism that he uses to move up and down along that base. And on the base we have like some kind of tire treads or something to kind of move around. So if the character is here, right, the character is battling him, he can kind of elevate up and down to kind of change his eye level to attack my character. I like this arm, right? So I'll probably want to grab that. I like the idea of these kinds of piping or something, or maybe this character is not very mobile. Like maybe he has a certain limited range, how far he can go, because he's hooked up into some larger machinery. So yeah, so I'm just talking through this here, just kind of like brainstorming, exploring it. You see, I said do at least 3 ideas, but if I stuck to the first 3 ideas, I probably wouldn't be very happy. My first idea was this, and you know, it's not horrible, but it's not like very inspired. This is kind of interesting. There's something interesting happening here, and I think maybe there's more legs coming out. There's something of interest here. I don't know what that is, but maybe this is the kind of the central column that kind of cylinder kind of moves up and down on. I think that's interesting as a base, and maybe we'll never even see the base, but it's just kind of good to know what that could potentially look like. And this could kind of be hooked into like kind of some other kind of machinery, or kind of getting power or something from elsewhere. I do like this as well. So I like to throw a whole bunch of ideas down, and then kind of zoom out, look at everything together, and kind of think, okay, this I like, you know, these tire treads I like. This shape, I actually really like it a lot. I like this, I like that, and I like this idea. So what if I were to kind of try to synthesize these and I'll continuously iterate. So this first kind of like combination of these different ingredients, it'll probably not work, but it might. And what I like about this method is it seems like a little unorthodox, yes, and maybe it is, but what I like about it is it allows me, doesn't, at least I don't think it does, it doesn't kind of pigeonhole me into any like one style, doesn't pigeonhole me into any kind of one approach or one subject matter. I can at any time draw anything, right? I can kind of say, oh, today I'm going to draw cars. I don't know anything about cars. How would I approach it? Let me first kind of do my research and kind of figure out what do cars look like. I'll probably still won't be very good at drawing cars, if I never draw them. But I'll be better than if I just tried to jump in and just draw it from scratch, right? And at the same time, I don't have to be somebody who has to avoid it, saying, "Oh, I don't draw cars. Sorry, I only draw, He-Man, or I only draw She-Ra, or I only draw Care Bears, or whatever. I only draw Hello Kitty." My goal is to deconstruct the whole graphic design and development process, so you can kind of reduce it down to its kind of constituent elements. It's the lines, the shapes, the colors, the proportions, the purpose, the protagonist, the pose, right? The personality, the perspective, etc. And then kind of go from there. Let's get some like big machinery in here that it's hooked up to. So this is kind of the constraints of this thing. So it's kind of like the big kind of cylindrical forms that I really liked from those other designs. But I need a little bit more space. And when I'm say like make this thing massive, let's make it like insanely massive. Like let's make it so our character is like a speck, like a dot, like that's our character relative to this giant thing. It's like what is that game that was so popular? Where you fight the giants. Colossus? No, what is it? You guys know. Shadow of Colossus, thank you. Okay, so this is kind of where we're at, and I don't think I landed on something, quite yet. To do a boss character, to do a main character, it requires a little bit of exploration, and I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I have some ideas that I do like. I'm not sure if I'm totally sold on this here, this base, what this looks like. Maybe there's more of these legs in the back. Okay. And I want to figure out like what does this look like? What does this enclosure look like? This seems a little too regular to me. Lots of small panels will help to kind of suggest the scale that I'm looking for. Most of you guys won't have this issue because you're not going to be drawing something gigantic. But I do like a lot of what's going on here, so we can have like some kind of upper element like so. Again, cylindrical form with some kind of like head part that stays fixed. It doesn't rotate, and then on there can be like our character's, not face, we don't want like a face, but some kind of like eye or something that and then maybe this is where the writing is, whatever it is. What did I call it? The Zelbatron 10,000, or maybe that's going to be on here. Zelbatron, right? 10,000. Model 1 or something like that. And And yeah, and I think something like this is kind of interesting. Maybe there's some kind of like kind of vent where smoke comes out here as well. Yeah, and then these bigger kind of structures here. And then he has some arms, or it has some arms. And it's going to be something like that. And the other arm, I can make it like a cannon. I was doing something kind of interesting there. Thinking, because it's a robot, I gotta think of other things too, like how will the joints rotate and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more involved. But yeah, actually, I'm not a fan of this. But again, this is iteration number 1. So let's kind of like retry this, see if we can't kind of make it a little bit more visually interesting. I find the second time I draw something, I can be a little looser, not as like robotic in my approach. I can take a few more liberties, be a little bit more rhythmic and kind of looser and freer. And I find I can, oftentimes come up with like a more visually appealing result, because I'm not worried about what I'm going to draw anymore. I kind of know what I'm drawing. I just can focus on the kind of treatment. So again, this is how I work. Some people don't have to go through these different steps. They can kind of just arrive at that final idea. They can more pre-visualize in their mind beforehand. That's just not how I work. And I think kind of what I've done and I've had to do over my time and career, both in teaching and also in doing this stuff, is that I have to figure out a process that I can kind of generate a predictable result for a client, or explain to students kind of a repeatable method that they can take to generate strong results, and ultimately that's kind of what I'm doing here. I think I like this in principle. It's just, how do I want to connect that arm now? So what do those arms look like? And where do they sit? How do they fit with all this? So that's a piece that I need to work out. And I don't know exactly what that looks like now. And I don't know if I'll get there by the end of today's class. Or I'll probably get there eventually, but we're constrained by me wanting to make sure that I can kind of keep moving forward with this. So I'm gonna kind of just get that anchor thing going. Okay, we'll have some ropes here, and maybe it just kind of shoots out this kind of like structure. Okay, and the other arm, I'm trying to think what I might have here. I don't know. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of doing straights and curves, straights and curves, and seeing if I can kind of generate something interesting. Playing with shapes. Maybe it's like a shovel or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I can't. I'm kind of getting a block here. So I'm just gonna look at this shape and maybe kind of lean into that shape and kind of see what I might get. Okay. Cool. And I'll just copy this here and just put that on there. So I think that's that's probably my I like this actually too. I think it's just these arms I don't like. Something about it I don't like, and I just can't put my finger on what it is. I think it's probably just the way that this form kind of comes in to this. I think it looks too like arm-like, and this is like more so a robot. It's kind of designed for structure. It's got a specific intent, so it's not supposed to look like an arm, and I'm trying to force it to look like an arm, and I think that's probably where I'm falling flat. It doesn't seem consistent with what the design would be. And I think that's better. Like, just have this thin line that leads to this bigger structure, bigger shape. Yeah, I think that alone, I think this kind of does it. I also like this, but I think I would take this idea and apply it back into this one, where it's not trying to be organic. It's just like purely kind of like rigid, functional, kind of just robotic looking, functional versus anything else. Okay, so I think between these two, I think I have something. I think I'm pretty happy with both of these. So the next step would be to pose it. So that'll be fun. So starting with this idea, right? We'd want to kind of explore some different poses. Luckily, the posing of this guy will be fairly straightforward. Why is that? Because like all he can do is twist along this central column, go up and down, and then move his arms around, right? So that's helpful. Incidentally, I'm just going to quickly jump over to a 3D program. So I'm using a program here called 3D Coat, not to kind of go in a totally different direction, but I did want to mention something that we touched on earlier. So say we had a character like this, right? And we talked about the center line. So if we had a front view of our character, I'm just going to go over here. Don't worry about what I'm doing. I don't expect you guys to copy or know, or just using this for demonstration purposes. But I can basically draw a thin line here. Down the center of our character. Okay, and that's kind of when I was talking about the center line. That's what I meant. Okay, that 3/4 line. It looks something like that. Okay, so you get a really good sense of how that carries across. And then we had an example with overalls on our character. Let's turn on symmetry. So if we had overalls, could kind of have something like this. Right? See how they kind of suggest the shape, the form of our character, right? And see how this line, if I'm looking down on it, see how it tilts upwards like that, or tilts downwards. And if I'm looking up at it, it tilts upwards. And then let's talk about the socks here. All right, so if I'm looking down on the feet, you see how the near foot, let's turn on perspective. See, my horizon line is about midway through my character. So looking up at the shoulders, see that tilt, tilt through the legs, tilt through the feet, tilt through the socks, and you see how we're seeing that arc here, which suggests a form. If we look up at things, it arcs the other way. Okay. That's not why I opened this 3D package, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to also cover that. But what I want to do is just show you, this is something that we do sometimes in drawing. If you know some 3D, is you can make like simple kind of mock-ups in 3D that will help you to design things. So if you're pretty okay with 3D, and this program is kind of neat because it has a lot of like of the shapes that I could potentially work with, like that screw shape as a primitive object. So we can plan things out, work things out, right? I could do this, and I could kind of get that angle or whatever pose that I want, and then kind of go from there. So my purpose of doing something like this would be to have some arms, basically I could use something like this to help me with the posing process. To generate quicker poses. It's not something I'm necessarily going to really do, but it's just something that because it's such a geometric structure, it would be a lot easier for me to kind of work with basic forms and shapes like this. And incidentally, this program, 3D Code, is used a lot by concept artists to help them like develop images or concepts, you know, so they don't have to kind of like redraw things all the time and whatnot. Okay, so basically what's neat about it is I can kind of add these like primitive forms and shapes. So for those of you who feel like, oh, I can't draw, or you know, I don't draw, or I'm never going to be comfortable with it, a lot of really talented visual designers, they work primarily in 3D. And there's concept artists who never draw, or they start their drawings in digital. Like they start with something like this, and then they kind of switch it up after the fact. Okay, so I can take this, rotate the arm, and I accidentally included everything in the same layer. But again, the idea is here we could use 3D to help us map things out if we were so inclined, and if we had some 3D know-how. So some people use Maya or Blender or SketchUp or 3D Coat or whatever you can use to kind of just generate a quick image or pose. Okay, so I could basically take this, all right, and I could print screen on that, get to my Pinterest or my PureRef, Control V, paste that in here somewhere. Okay, and it just becomes something that I can look at through this posing process. Don't have to, but I show this to you just to kind of hopefully help make a connection between 3D form and kind of like what this would look like, you know, as a 2D person, kind of going in and kind of just trying to plan it out and just draw it out. Okay. And of course you could, you know, if you make the 3D, you could trace over top of it, especially if it's your own 3D. You can absolutely trace over top of it. Please do not trace other people's work, but you can trace over top of any 3D stuff that you generate yourself. Or you can just kind of use it as a reference for drawing, as I'm doing here. I'm starting to get a better kind of sense of like how I might approach this. The shape or form, and maybe it's got some wires kind of hanging here and all this kind of stuff. I think it needs to be even more kind of like sophisticated. I need to have some like pipes and other wires. So I'm continuously iterating and continuously like tweaking my design, you know, as I go. But I have that general sense. And I'll get these legs in. So here I'll have this like be like a kind of a cannon arm or something. Probably want to look at some, you know, more reference for that part, but yeah, I think already like once I add a pose, I think it's starting to really kind of make it like more and more successful to me. Still not totally locked into like the overall silhouette. The sooner we can get like really locked into that, the better. But in general, I think I'm on the right track now. We can make this even taller. Okay, I think I haven't fully figured out what I want to do here at the bottom, at the base with these legs. And again, I think I have to stop thinking leg. I have to stop thinking arm. You know, I have to think functionality. I think, what does this thing do? What is it designed to do? What is it supposed to do? And make sure that I design it for that particular purpose. And in doing so, I think it'll just kind of it'll come together. It'll make sense. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. We want to come up with like multiple poses, you know, at least 3 poses. So here I'm kind of exploring like, where is the character flexible, you know, where are they not flexible, what works, what doesn't work. And that's kind of my MO. What works, what doesn't work. If it doesn't work, don't do it anymore. If it works, kind of explore it further. So I'm kind of that's my whole kind of process. Just see what works, what doesn't work. It's very, I shouldn't say it's scientific, but I loved science as a child, and I wanted to be an inventor, and I think that's how I approach this stuff. It's like, you know, okay, experiment number 1, does this and this work? Experiment number 2, does, you know, based on, you know, what I tried in the last one, XYZ does not work, but X or this did work. Let's explore it further. And that's kind of the general approach that I take. And I imagine this arm thing could rotate around. Okay, and then kind of would have to find another pose as well. And as I'm thinking about it, I think it'd be neat if there's some flexibility here in this base, so I could kind of tilt it more. Again, I'm the designer, so I can kind of decide however I want to approach this thing. It's my call. It's up to me. So long as I can, you know, kind of make it make sense, I'm free to do that thing. So these might be some kind of like chords, or like I said, that kind of run from one structure to the next structure. Yeah. And I always like leave the details as much as possible to the end. Try to find the bigger shapes, bigger forms, the general thrust of those forms. So like what I mean by that is it tilting forward? Is the bigger form tilting forward? And then I have these cross-contoured ones like this. If I know that, then I'm doing some text. I know that that text will wrap around the form, you know. Or if I want to have some kind of panel or straight shape like that, I know that it will kind of come across a little bit, go on an angle upwards, right, and then come across further. I have like an easier kind of guide to work with if I work out the general shape and structure first. So anyways, that's kind of the idea. So I work on my pose, personality for this guy. I'll do my best to kind of speak to that as well. But that's going to be a little bit more of an abstraction, right? I think that'll come more so from like if I see the robot's face, think of how large it is, and maybe my character is like this big relative to the robot, or even smaller than that. Oops. Maybe this is him. Maybe his shoulder, that gives me an idea. Maybe the shoulder pads come up some. That's kind of interesting. So maybe he's standing on the shoulder pad here. All right, so whatever I can do to convey personality, and that can come through like pose, tilting, you know, to be more strong and robust, or like more wilting and sad. And I think I'd have to kind of find ways to convey the personality that way, and also probably through color and value, because it won't be quite as straightforward. I don't have like eyes, like regular eyes for facial expression. So I'll have to kind of think of other ways through posture. Again, by virtue of the fact that it's a robot, it's a little harder to do that, but of course it is possible. Okay. But I want to speak to that. I can make it look sad, like a sad robot, like it doesn't want to be doing, it doesn't want to be bad, but it is bad. It can't help itself. It can't fight its programming. You know, I can make it sympathetic in that way. I could try for that. You can think of Wall-E, the robot, who's definitely has ways of emoting. But we're running a little light on time, so I don't know if I'll get all the way through this. But the last piece would be the, not the last piece, but after this would be perspective. So for perspective, what we'll want to do is basically look at, you know, what's our vantage point on this thing? Are we like having this extreme upshot, you know? Are we kind of like down shot like this? Are we on the shoulder of the robot? Are we our character here, right? Looking at the robot. And of course you can see the appeal of working in 3D because, you know, you can very easily kind of like tweak and test out different proportions, and more importantly, you can easily test different perspectives. I think that's the great power of working in 3D and the big appeal that exists there. Okay, so we could say explore, this is our vantage point of our character on the shoulder of this giant robot, you know, or we could say we're way down here, or we're here, or we're here, or we're there. We could quickly kind of explore that. If we're not using 3D, then we got to just kind of sketch it out ourselves, you know, which is also fine, but it's just a bit more of a process. But again, I'm not expecting any of you to work with 3D, but I'm not so naive to think that none of you can. So, for those who can, some of the things I might do. Oops. You know, you can kind of, if you can texture, you can kind of like plan things out. So if I have a panel, right, I can kind of get a sense of, oh, that's what the panel is going to look like. So this is kind of like, again, those cross contour lines. It's just kind of all there for you. MC whatever, you know, your text you want to have here, 1,000 or 10,000. All right, all that stuff you can kind of put in here. You can get our little rivets, so you can kind of really easily and quickly get a sense of where all this is going to land. Right, as you continuously kind of iterate and plan things out. You can kind of some really cool poses. You know, we can be down the barrel of a gun, or you know, you can just really explore, right? So I encourage you to, you know, in your own time, kind of incorporate 3D approaches into your workflow. I know you guys have been messing around with Unity. Unity allows you to work with primitive shapes. You can absolutely use a program like Unity to kind of plan things out. But don't do it if you feel like it's going to be too cumbersome. If it, you know, it's probably better at this stage to just go in and do it this way. Figure out your perspective. Right, so perspective, I'd like to see 3 of these as well. 3 options. 3 options. Okay, and then when we get to our presentation, what I'll do, guys, is because we didn't get all the way through it, I'll save the presentation part till next week, because that's quite a big part, and I can kind of just focus on that in a whole class, and that's going to be looking at the values and the colors, and then I'll push the deadline of the assignment to I can push it to the probably the 2nd or the 3rd, which isn't a whole lot, but I think that's enough, actually. Yeah, because we'll have next class, which is the 27th. I'll definitely push the assignment at least to the 2nd, possibly the 3rd of November. But that'll give you guys, you know, a little bit of extra time. And so if we cover value and rendering, value and color next class, and potentially some cleanup in rendering, you guys should be in a good shape, I think, for that submission. All right. But for perspective, we want to have like different vantage points on our mech, right? So you can kind of have your low horizon line, if this is our horizon line, right? So if we have our low horizon line and we have our mech above, or our character above that horizon line, what would that look like? How far above the horizon is it going to be? Right? Is it so far above that our vanishing point is up top here? All right, we're doing like a 1 point or 2 point perspective scene, kind of looking up. Okay, and what does all that look like? And I think this is kind of where, for me, this gets more interesting. I think I start to get more of that vibe that I'm going for, more of my purpose. It's coming through here as I imagine what it would be like to stand underneath this gigantic kind of structure, this giant robot, this giant machine. So from the ground, you're just looking up at this kind of massive column, you know? All right, so that's kind of the idea. That's what we're thinking of, guys, here. But we want to try 3 different perspectives. All of them should, in some way, try to convey our purpose. Okay, so this is a towering boss, way bigger than the screen. So my character, again, will be tiny down here. My screen maybe is like this. Who knows? I'll have to figure out what that looks like, but you know, I need to think of what's that vantage point going to look like from the perspective of my video game. Okay, and so try 3 different perspectives. Here I'll have a higher horizon line. Okay, we could be looking down on it. Maybe our character is coming up on some kind of cliff and he's going to jump down, right? And our horizon line is way up here. And maybe the robot is kind of down here. But I should draw them bigger. So below the horizon line, but still big enough to kind of see, you know, make out the design. That's kind of cool too. If we're looking down in this giant pit, you know, and the horizon line's really high, and even still, the character's the enemy's head is like right at that horizon line. I think that's kind of also speaks to the scale of this thing. Okay, so that's the thinking, guys. there's so much to cover, but hopefully that helps. I think it's just break it down, small granular pieces, and kind of whittle down that idea bit by bit. Try not to bite off too big of a chunk all at once, and trying to kind of just divide and conquer, right? Come up with like the high level ideas first, and then kind of gradually refine. Work in passes. First pass is very broad, very general, broad strokes, and then you gradually work your way down to the finer and finer details. So hopefully that helps, guys. I know, it seems like just a lot of like stuff, doesn't like seem like anything concrete, but we have an idea. I have an idea here that I'll carry forward next class with you guys. I'll take one of these concepts, we'll settle in on a perspective, and then we'll look at the presentation, which is going to start speaking to things like value and color. All right, so we'll explore 3 options, right? And then based on whatever we arrive, what we like the best from those, we'll explore 3 more. Okay. And that will kind of give us our final colored version that we can kind of tighten up and finalize and submit as our final version. All right, guys. We went through a lot today. Hopefully that helps. I'll continue chipping away at the first assignment submissions. And any questions, just let me know. But beyond that, I just thank you for sticking around and do your best to kind of take in what we've done here and apply this to your own character. I'm doing a robotic character, so in some ways it's presents different challenges from doing like a more organic character. Character has its own challenges. We will talk later about anatomy and bones and muscles and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be important too. But for now, just focus on your character. Focus on the shapes. Consider form though. Make sure that whatever you do, it's your character's structural. Try to draw things like cross contour lines, a center line down the face and the body, just to kind of give you a strong sense of where things ought to be situated. It gives you a good way to anchor things. All right, so I don't want to take up any more of your time, guys. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys next time. All right, thanks a lot. I'll post a picture for sure. All right, so I'm going to close this stream down, and I'll jump back over to Google Meet to close us out.